about the best neighborhoods in North Atlanta, and we'll break it down by the type of buyer that we might be working with. So let's get started with families. For families, we're gonna recommend Alpharetta, Milton, Johns Creek, East Cobb, and Roswell. Now that is a lot of areas to recommend, but these areas are all very close together and offer some of the same benefits, some a little bit more than others. Some of the benefits I think for families is the community. People in these areas tend to be like-minded. They're looking for highly rated schools, things to do that are very family friendly, access to grocery stores, some sort of outdoor lifestyle, and these communities all have those things.
Yeah, and I think some of the biggest draws, like we mentioned, are the schools and the foundations that provide and the money that's pumped into these schools from the community that give these kids such great opportunities. So I think when we're talking about these areas for families, that's the biggest draw and what people are looking for when moving into these communities if they have a family and that's kind of their demographic. Okay, so if we're talking about like young professionals living in a certain area in these North Atlanta suburbs, I think the biggest focus would be like the Dunwoody and Sandy Springs area. And the reason we say that is because those two communities lie right at 285 and they are the best mix for kind of the suburban feel and the city feel. When I say on the border of 285, just so you know, when you come here and we're talking about the locals and how they talk, we describe it as inside the perimeter and outside of the perimeter. Perimeter is that 285 loop that runs around Atlanta. So Sandy Springs and Dunwoody are right on that border, which is why it kind of gives you that suburban and city feel at the same time. So in these areas, you're going to have a really great commute into downtown. If you're having to commute, you can easily jump on public transportation to get in town. And in fact, sometimes you can almost feel like you don't need a car. I say almost because it's not the same as living in like a big city if you're coming from, let's say, Boston, right? Where public transportation is abundant and you never need a car. Also in these areas, I think the nightlife is more abundant. And really, I think that goes back to being able to get into downtown. You're going to have a different type of nightlife than you're going to see in some of the other northern suburbs. And you're going to have just a bigger concentration of those young urban professionals who haven't quite made the trip to the northern suburbs where more of the families are gathering.
Yeah, and one other thing to mention for professionals is there's pretty easy access to the airport from Sandy Springs. That's a huge draw because, of course, the Atlanta International Airport is a hub for Delta. So easy access if you are a professional that needs to travel.
Yep, exactly.
So for our outdoor lovers, buyers that are really focused on having great access to that outdoor lifestyle, we're going to recommend Cumming and Woodstock. So Cumming is a suburb of Atlanta. It's a little bit further out, but I think what a lot of outdoor lovers enjoy is the access to Lake Lanier. So if you love being out on the water, if you're planning on having a boat or a jet ski, or you love to kayak or paddleboard, this is really a great option for you. It also has, I guess, less of a dense feel. So I feel like a lot of the outdoor buyers really enjoy that. The other community is Woodstock. Woodstock is very close to some of the North Atlanta suburbs that we talk about, but it has a great combination of parks, a trail system, and you're going to have access to Lake Altoona. So it's really kind of got everything that an outdoor lover could be looking for. So today we're talking about generalities of these areas. We dive deeper into all of these areas in our other videos.
So the truth is, if you're a family or a young professional or someone that loves the outdoors, any of these areas can be right for you. And I think we're just breaking it down into really general kind of demographics in these areas.
I think you were thinking we don't want to pigeonhole people, but I think these are the biggest differences between the different areas that we're talking about.
Yeah. So we have neighborhood specific videos. So if you are interested in some of these areas and want to learn more about them in depth, be sure to go back and check out some of these videos and we'll give you a greater understanding. Okay, next up, let's talk about the housing market and the home prices in these areas. So kind of specifically what we're talking about right here when we're going to give you some of these numbers are going to be Woodstock, Roswell, Marietta, which includes East Cobb, Alpharetta, Johns Creek, and Milton. First, we're going to start with the townhome prices. And I think what you're going to find in these areas, that is going to be the easiest point of entry into these areas the most affordable. So we're looking at kind of townhomes and condos. The median sales price, and this is for all of 2024, is going to be $474,000 to get into a townhome or condo. That is actually going to be up 7.9% year over year from 2023. So there's been a lot of growth there, but it's still the easiest price point to get into.
So when we're talking about single family homes, that's appealing to the buyer that really wants more space, wants a yard, maybe has a family. And with these homes, the median sales price year over year is $625,000. And the prices are only up about 5%, which is interesting because I feel like there is in general more demand for single family homes. But again, we're speaking in generalities here. And so, depending on where you're looking, that's going to be much higher.
Yeah. And so then if you look at the luxury properties, and we're defining luxury properties as anything above $1 million. Mm-hmm. So you're looking at a median price point with just over 1.3 million. And those properties are up 0.5%. So half of a percentage point year over year, 23 to 24. To me is kind of in line. We saw some of the pricing come down just a little bit in 2024. And it starts with the higher prices, right? Not quite as much growth when you're looking at luxury properties.
Yeah, and I think when you're comparing the $1.3 million house to, let's say, the $750 to $850 price point, you're going to find more updates. You're going to maybe find a swimming pool, slightly better location. So for the buyer that's relocating here and really wants to upgrade their lifestyle, definitely plan to be in that luxury price point.
Yeah, and I think going back really quick, one thing to note, because you were a little bit surprised about the 5% growth, I'm going to say this. What we're hearing is that 2024 was the second worst year in real estate, next to like the bust in 2008. But interestingly enough, even though it is the second worst real estate year, we're still seeing all of this growth in the northern suburbs. If you're thinking about real estate year, you may be thinking declines. That's not the case. You're almost insulated in this bubble that's not quite as affected by the market and the volatility that can be showing in the market as some other areas.
And just a tip, when you're thinking about relocating to these areas and your real estate agent is going to be super important in this because it's very much neighborhood and school specific. You want to be prepared to write a strong offer and face a lot of demand. So again, neighborhood specific, you're going to find higher increases in the highly rated school districts, and you're going to need to have a very competitive offer to win. So if you're ready to make a move here, give Jen and I a call, shoot us a text. We know how to win offers in this market, and we'd be happy to guide you through that process. So we're talking about schools, outdoor recreation and lifestyle, and also sort of a family-friendly environment. The North Atlanta suburbs are by far the best place to live.
So if you have kids, schools are probably a priority. And so areas like Cobb County, specifically East Cobb, you're going to have these amazing public schools. If you go into areas like Fulton County, which includes like Roswell, you're going to have options of great charter schools. Some of these even have like STEM programs in them. So it's like you can get a private school education with a public school price tag, if you will, and still have these specialty schools available. So if you're looking for something for kids that's a perfect fit, then you can find it in these North Atlanta suburbs. You just have to know where to look.
Yeah, and it's great, especially if you have little kids, because you make this decision to move into a school district. And then as your kids get older, you're thinking maybe this isn't the right fit. Maybe I made the wrong choice. But you have the option of charter and magnet schools that will really hone in on what they are most interested in. So it's really great. And North Atlanta is packed with all kinds of family activities. All of these areas that we've talked about have some sort of downtown or amphitheater, parks, and a lot of family-friendly events and festivals, farmers markets, and shopping, just a ton to do. Very family friendly.
Okay, and then, for parks and recreation, it's just abundant all over North Atlanta. You've got the big Greenway Park, you've got the Chattahoochee Nature Center and recreation there where you can throw a kayak onto the river if you're looking in like Sandy Springs and Roswell. And then don't forget how close the North Georgia mountains are to these areas, especially when you're talking about like the Cumming area near Lake Lanier. So it's a quick weekend trip to go rafting, whitewater rafting, to go hiking into the mountains, or just like a quick getaway to rent a place in the mountains. Proximity to everything that you can do outdoor and recreation wise is at your fingertip in the North Atlanta suburbs.
Yeah, so if you love to run, bike, hike, if you like the lake lifestyle, if you want to head to the mountains, it's got something for everybody. Yeah. We would not be doing you a service in our North Atlanta moving guide if we didn't mention commutes. We don't have great public transportation, so in most areas outside the perimeter, which again is just outside 285, so anything that's sort of considered outside the city, you are going to need a car. And also there's not as much walkability in some of these areas. So if you're moving here from out of state, if you're living in a city, New York, Boston, Chicago, just know that it's something to be aware of and to prepare for.
So if that commute time is important to you and you want to stay in those North Atlanta suburbs, probably are looking in like Dunwoody and Sandy Springs that have a shorter commuter time to the city and that also have easier access to public transportation, which is our MARTA system here. So if you do want to take your car into the city, you're only looking at maybe a 20-minute drive.
Yeah, there are so many nuances when it comes to public transportation and just commuting in general. So Jen and I can really assist you with that and help you cater where you're moving to whatever your commute is. What we're finding for a lot of our buyers, and I think a lot of the workforce in our country right now, is this hybrid working situation. And so if you are a hybrid worker, living in the North Atlanta suburbs, getting the bigger house, getting good yard space and the good schools, and having the benefit of working from home is great. And then maybe you go into the office 1 or 2 days a week. It allows you to have a more balanced lifestyle and quality of life, living a little bit further out, but still have access to get into the city when you need to.
Yeah, and I think what you're going to find is that you learn the traffic patterns. And so if you have the flexibility to go in earlier or later, you avoid some of that traffic. And then what we also find that some of our clients do when they're living in further out in the suburbs is drive in to Sandy Springs or Dunwoody, park at the MARTA station and take the train in the rest of the way. And you're avoiding some of that kind of inside the perimeter traffic that can get really heavy. And so we're going to also cover some of our favorite commuter hacks in a later video, so be sure to check that out. All right, let's talk about what no one tells you about moving to the North Atlanta suburbs. It's got this picture perfect charm and really hard to find things that are wrong with it. But did you know that
it's highly competitive? I feel like every time I get an out-of-state buyer, they understand they're going to get a better quality of life for less money, but the price tag still tends to surprise them. The older homes also can be a little bit of a shock. And also just the demand in general. You really have to go in strong with your offers in a lot of these areas, and that definitely catches people off guard.
Yeah, and I think especially now that we've got seasonality back. So the market's going to heat up in the spring and the summer, and that's mostly due to the fact that people are trying to get to where they're going to get their kids into school when we're talking about a lot of these North Atlanta suburbs.
And that brings us to our next point, the school calendar. A lot of people moving here from the North and maybe even the Midwest are not necessarily familiar with what our schooling calendar looks like in, Cobb, Fulton, Gwinnett, a lot of these counties. So we actually start school in general somewhere around August 1st. Yes, August 1st. And then we end our school year in early May. So usually the second week of May. And a lot of these districts have a lot more breaks than you're used to. So we have a fall break. We have a, Christmas holiday break. We
Thanksgiving
have
break.
Oh my gosh, yes. Forgot Thanksgiving. And then we also have our February break, which catches all the parents by surprise. And then of course we end with our spring break. So tons of breaks here, it can make things a little bit more challenging for families that have kids.
Okay, so something else that people should be aware of and may not know is that a lot of these neighborhoods have HOAs. So these are governed by people who have been voted into the neighborhood, sometimes managed by an external company. But what these HOAs bring are additional fees and more restrictions on what you can and can't do with your personal home. So be aware of that.
People are also surprised, I think, by the types of restaurants and like coffee shops within some of these suburbs. So we're finding over the years, we're getting a lot more diverse options, really nice high-end to, mid-range restaurants and dining options. And these communities really have this small town feel, but with some of the big town amenities. Like for instance, in Woodstock, there's actually a working train, which is really, really cute. There's a cute little historic district, but then you also have this modern sort of downtown area. So really a great mix.
So it's really those little things about moving to the North Atlanta suburbs that make it feel like not just a move to the area, but really a lifestyle upgrade.
And don't miss that recommended video on our screen where we talk about why it might be the best time to move. And can you like and subscribe our video? It really helps with the algorithm. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
See you then.